The mind is like an iceberg. It floats with 1/7 of its bulk above water. One day in retrospect, the years of struggle will strike you as the most beautiful. The voice of the intellect is a soft one, but it does not rest until it has gained a hearing. The ego is not master in its own house. The first human who hurled an insult instead of a stone was the founder of civilization. Unexpressed emotions will never die. They are buried alive and will come forth later in uglier ways. Most people do not really want freedom because freedom involves responsibility, and most people are frightened of responsibility. Where id was, there ego shall be. Being entirely honest with oneself is a good exercise. From error to error, one discovers the entire truth. The mind is its own place, and in itself can make a heaven of hell, a hell of heaven. A civilization which leaves so large a number of its participants unsatisfied and drives them into revolt neither has nor deserves the prospect of lasting existence. What we call happiness in the strictest sense comes from the preferably sudden satisfaction of needs which have been dammed up to a high degree. Love and work, work and love, that's all there is. The great question that has never been answered, and which I have not yet been able to answer, despite my 30 years of research into the feminine soul, is, what does a woman want? It is impossible to escape the impression that people commonly use false standards of measurement, that they seek power, success, and wealth for themselves, and admire them in others, and that they underestimate what is of true value in life. The mind is not a vessel to be filled, but a fire to be kindled. We are never so defenseless against suffering as when we love. Out of your vulnerabilities will come your strength. The only person with whom you have to compare yourself is you in the past. The interpretation of dreams is the royal road to a knowledge of the unconscious activities of the mind. Civilized society is perpetually menaced with disintegration through its primary hostility of men towards one another. Neurosis is the inability to tolerate ambiguity. What progress we are making! In the Middle Ages, they would have burned me. Now they are content with burning my books. The narcissistic individual is the one who is closed to others, who lacks empathy, and who has a sense of entitlement and grandiosity. The ego is not sharply separated from the external world. It merges into it. The goal of all life is death. Time spent with cats is never wasted. I have found little that is good about human beings on the whole. In my experience, most of them are trash. The most common form of despair is not being who you are. When inspiration does not come to me, I go halfway to meet it. In the small matters, trust the mind. In the large ones, the heart. Men are strong so long as they represent a strong idea. They become powerless when they oppose it. The doctor should be opaque to his patients and, like a mirror, should show them nothing but what is shown to him. Anxiety is the price we pay for civilization. No one who, like me, conjures up the most evil of those half-tamed demons that inhabit the human beast can expect to come through the struggle unscathed. The mind is its own place, and in itself can make a heaven of hell, a hell of heaven. A person who feels pleasure in producing pain in someone else in a sexual relationship is also capable of enjoying as pleasure any pain which he may himself derive from sexual relations. A sadist is always, at the same time, a masochist. The manifest content of the dream is the dream as it appears to the dreamer, whereas the latent content is the underlying meaning of the dream. The interpretation of dreams is the royal road to a knowledge of the unconscious activities of the mind. The first requisite of civilization is that of justice. If no one has the answers to all the questions, that is the proof that God is not with him. It means that he is a false prophet using religion for himself. The dream is the liberation of the spirit from the pressure of external nature, a detachment of the soul from the fetters of matter. It is not easy to become a saint in the midst of family life. We are never so defenseless against suffering as when we love. Where the id was, there ego shall be. The act of birth is the first experience of anxiety, and thus the source and prototype of the effect of anxiety. An abnormal reaction to an abnormal situation is normal behavior. Illusions commend themselves to us because they save us pain and allow us to enjoy pleasure instead. Who lacks sex speaks about sex. Hungry talks about food. A person who has no money about money. And our oligarchs and bankers talk about morality. The ego is not master in its own house. The goal of all life is death. Most people do not really want freedom because freedom involves responsibility, and most people are frightened of responsibility. The voice of the intellect is a soft one, but it does not rest until it has gained a hearing. The madman is a dreamer awake.